I love the movie Billy Elliot so much. Johannes, my partner, he mostly just falls asleep when I put it on. But me, I love every minute of it. A movie about coal miners on strike, about gender fluidity, ballet dancing, and the great fullness of human emotion. How could I not love it? I do not think you need to be particularly familiar with the film to feel the palpable anger that we just witnessed. A boy grieving the loss of his mom and wishing so much for the approval of his family while his brother and father wrestle with the devastating reality of not being able to provide what they want for their family. While they too are grieving the death of their deceased mother and a wife. How right for Billy to be angry, to express it in an embodied way, to let it out, feeling it through his whole self. As he pounds his hands on the walls, tap dances through the streets, and finally crashes down in a huff. I can feel that anger. I can feel the heartache, frustration. Cameron Diaz as Miss Hannigan is a very different kind of anger. More annoyance and disappointment than heartache. Her anger, though, is still very present. And we get to witness it, see it. And since I am still feeling a little angry that I missed the Oscars last Sunday, you all get to watch little clips of movies during church. That's my way of dealing with it. When was the last time you were angry? When did you feel anger that made your face feel hot? Did you lose access to words that usually make sense for you? Did you have a quiver in your voice? Did your lips get tight and neck kind of tense up? I've talked quite a bit about our journey towards becoming feelings scientists, relying on the tools from Mark Brackett. You may recall the poster board I held up with the feelings quadrants on the axis of high to low energy and high to low pleasantness. Anger, very clearly, finds itself on the high energy, low pleasantness, red quadrant that we're offered. When interacting with other people, anger is one of the easiest emotions for us to spot, to recognize and perceive in somebody else. Very few of us are particularly good at hiding anger. Some of us think we are, and often think we're better at it than we really are. And that almost always leads to some good opportunities, I think, if we're in good relationship with one another, to gently tease. Those of you who are parents, I can imagine you've done this with your children, with the intention of getting them from angry, grumpy selves to a bit of laughter, silliness, when someone's hunched like this, trying not to be angry. But oh, don't smile, and then slowly it starts happening. In adulthood, teasing one another when we're angry, it can be a bit more tricky, but still, depending on your closeness, that relationship, the potential for laughter to heal through it, to move through it, can be possible when there's a lot of trust underneath it. So many of the religious resources about anger are about moving through and out of anger. Unitarian Universalists in particular seem to have kind of an allergy to the emotion. This reaction makes a lot of sense when we look at how our congregations have been created over the years. In predominantly white middle-class traditions with roots in New England Puritanism, anger can be too big of an emotion. It can be too messy of a feeling, too uncomfortable to sit with. Anger is certainly not polite. But what if we allow ourselves to feel too big sometimes? Feel messy and allow things to be a bit uncomfortable? What if we recognize that sometimes the value of politeness is overcome by the value of authenticity and truth? What might happen if we did that with one another? In our 2U covenant that we affirm each Sunday with one another, we promise to embrace conflict. Ours is a faith tradition that invites us to do what one member I was talking with this week called the impossible. We're practicing the impossibility of theological diversity under the same roof, or really in the same Zoom room. Not only that, we are choosing to bring to one another our past religious experiences, our joys and disappointments, our hopes and anxieties, and our desire to feel safe in a space that we know inevitably is going to bring discomfort at times. And we choose to do it anyhow. Amazing. And it is because of this choice that we make that I also believe we have the strength and capacity to encounter anger together, to feel it, and to work to know it before we move too quickly to overcome it, or get away from it, or suppress it. Carol Soucy, professor of pastoral care and counseling at Wellesley Theological Seminary, offers these words in her book, The Gift of Anger. Befriend your anger, she writes. Then you can hear the deeper truth that anger is revealing. Sometimes anger tiptoes, a gentle wake-up call slipping into the consciousness and building. I think I'm getting angry about this. Sometimes anger's ring is musical, a clock radio with a snooze alarm to let you slowly rise into the brightness of its day. Maybe I'm angry. Maybe I'm just tired. Sometimes the sound's a deafening clang, a jolt that throws you out of bed. But you can befriend your anger. Only then can you decide the what and when and how of your reply. Befriend your anger. Learn to stay with it, play with it, to leap back to its roots. There, you'll find a child in fear and pain, and return an adult with compassion. Befriend your anger. I love that idea of befriending your anger. Befriending my anger. When it's getting big inside of me, rather than telling it to simply go away, I like the idea of approaching my anger with care and listening to what it's trying to tell me. As I imagine is true for many of you, I've had a complex relationship to anger throughout my life, and it seems to be an ever-evolving one. When I was young, I did not want to express anger because I knew how scary it felt when my parents would argue loudly. So anger had to be replaced with kind of anxiety or peacemaking. As I grew older, anger seemed to me to be out of alignment with my pacifist viewpoints. And so when I felt angry, I would instead try to transform it into compassion towards those I was feeling angry with. During my early years of prison abolition organizing, my approach to anger changed drastically. Reading letter after letter after letter from LGBTQ and HIV positive prisoners who are experiencing unspeakable abuses, anger found a very righteous home within me. It did not always feel like messy anger. It often felt like calculated and specific anger. The system, as Reverend Allison preached about a couple of weeks ago, built on white supremacy, exploitation of poor people, ableism, and a multitude of other oppressions, this system was creating constant suffering and death for people I loved and for people I was just beginning to learn the names of. Anger became a necessary fuel for a growing organization and for my own sense of self in the face of so much pain. Anger was healing because it was so much better than despair. I was having a conversation with my friend Megan the other day, sharing that I was going to preach about anger and wondering if she had any thoughts. She said that for her, being in touch with her anger is a spiritual practice, in particular when it comes to injustice. For her, when she goes to protest with others who are also feeling angry, she has a sense of collective experience, a place to do something with the anger rather than just sitting in it alone. Have you ever experienced something similar? I know that not everyone amongst us has felt called to be in the streets, though I wonder if you have found other times when your anger has felt like a spiritual practice. Maybe in your own healing from trauma, you transformed guilt into anger and felt the spiritual healing of that. Maybe in your journey out of a domestic violence relationship, you transformed shame into anger, knowing that you deserved so much better. Maybe you found the spiritual practice of anger when you confronted a coworker who just constantly expected you to do all of the work while they took so much of the credit. Was there spiritual healing in that? So many of us have been taught not to be angry. Though I encourage you to imagine what it might look like for yourself to think of anger as your own spiritual practice. During the Derek Chauvin trial, one of the witnesses, Donald Williams, was being questioned at length by Chauvin's attorney about whether or not he was angry while Derek Chauvin murdered George Floyd. The attorney in his questioning highlighted that Williams had been using swear words and raising his voice at Chauvin. He suggested that Williams was getting angrier and angrier as George Floyd was dying. Donald Williams responded that he was not getting angry and that he refused to allow the attorney to paint him as angry. He stated that he was present in his body, connecting to his martial arts training and striving simply to be heard. Dominant culture in the United States loves to paint Black people as angry while simultaneously denying Black people the right to be angry. I want to fully respect how Donald Williams described how he was feeling. And I also wonder how any of us could possibly not feel angry in the face of such brutality. Audre Lorde, in her essay, The Master's Tools Will Never Dismantle the Master's House, writes, "For it is not the anger of Black women which is dripping down over this globe like a diseased liquid. It is not the anger, it's not the anger of Black women which corrodes into blind, dehumanizing power bent upon the annihilation of us all unless we meet it with what we have. Our power to examine and to redefine the terms upon which we will live and work, our power to envision and to reconstruct anger by painful anger, stone upon heavy stone, a future of pollinating difference in the earth to support our choices." I wonder how those words sit with you. As we think of anger as a spiritual practice, it matters what kind of anger we're speaking of. It matters where the anger comes from which well the anger springs. It matters where the anger is directed and what impact that anger has. Audre Lorde is reminding us that it is not Black anger that's creating global climate change, the violence of policing, economic inequities, or displacement from neighborhoods. Those of us who are white, those of us who are men, we need to take some time to reflect on how anger gets to be experienced, expressed, and witnessed in this world. Attending to the inequitable access to anger is part of the way we create justice. In a just world, we all have the freedom to express our feelings. At the same time, white men's anger would not get to dictate the order of our nation or the world. Wherever you land on the power and value of anger, something I am certain we can all agree on is that anger, if nothing else, is complicated. Anger is not one of the simple emotions we experience and notice as it just kind of comes and goes. While anger can be righteous, can be a spiritual practice, can be freeing, it can also become debilitating. It can be overshadowing a multitude of other feelings. It might be something that, for your well-being and fullness, needs to be soothed and ushered on its way. It might be the only feeling you know how to hold on to sometimes, and you need to be free from it. In anticipation of this sermon, I shared on our social media a mantra from Zen Master Thich Nhat Hanh. It goes like this. Breathing in, I know that anger is here. Breathing out, I know that the anger is not me. Breathing in, I know that anger is unpleasant. Breathing out, I know this feeling will pass. Breathing in, I am calm. Breathing out, I am strong enough to take care of this anger. The part in this mantra that resonates the most with me is a reminder that anger is not me. I can feel anger. I experience anger, but that does not mean that I am anger or even that I'm an angry person. The same is true for all of our feelings. Feelings are messages, they're information. Feelings are to be attended to. They do not need to define who we are, not even when we're getting lost in them. This month's theme is story, answering the question of what it means to be a people of story. So as you go forward through this week, through this month, consider what stories you have been told about anger. Ponder what stories you have heard from childhood and into this present moment. And then, as you are ready, consider what new stories you might need to write for yourself about anger. Let it be so, and amen.